Good evening and welcome to the Hill Country Region Porsche Club of America Distinguished Speaker Series presented by Speed City Racing. Tonight, a conversation with Magnus Walker with our host, Les Kiser. First, a word from Hill Country Region President Charlie Sparks.
Hi, this is Charlie Sparks. I'm president of Hill Country Region here in beautiful Central Texas, Porsche Club of America. And this is our Distinguished Speaker Series for March. And tonight we have not only members from the Hill Country region, but also we've got members from all of Zone 5 within Porsche Club of America, which essentially is Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, parts of Louisiana as well. I'm happy to report this is the largest attended audience, largest audience that we will have had for any of our Distinguished Speaker Series. I chalk it all up to our guest tonight. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Carl Rossi. He's the Vice President of Hill Country Region and is in charge now of our Distinguished Speaker Series that we're delivering virtually in our current environment. And so with that, Carl, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Charlie, and good evening, everyone. Just some quick rules of the road for tonight's presentation. You can ask questions. It's very simple. Click the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Type it in. Another screen will pop up. Type it in. We'll keep track of them, and we'll get those questions to our guest as soon as we can. The next thing, at the end of this presentation of the interview, you'll receive a brief survey. Please take a moment to fill it out and return it. It'll just help us design these and keep these to your satisfaction and meet your approval for additional events in the future. Now, without further, and one other point, this interview will be taped. It's being recorded right now. It'll be formatted and made available on the Hill Country Region website at a later date, probably a week or so out. And to remind everyone who is not familiar with us, that is hcrpca.org. Without any further delay, Hill Country Region and the Distinguished Speaker Series is pleased to welcome Magnus Walker in an interview with the Mayor of Speed City Broadcasting himself, Les Kiser.
Thank you. Guys, this is great. You know, I have, as many of you know, and I've met, I'm a big Porsche fanatic myself, have since 6 years old. Speed City is always tapped into the enthusiast, and with our access to the motorsports world, we meet some pretty cool people. Tonight, we're going to get to share some of our friends, and you're going to get to meet one of the kings of somebody around passion. A lot of times we say Porsche passion with this particular individual, but I want to thank you for this. This will also be available on Speed City Broadcast at a later date and shared there as well. But without anything further, this guy I met in the Circuit of the Americas, somebody said, "Did you see that guy?" I did not see a guy walk by. There were millions of guys walking by. I saw the back of him. Tall guy, long dreadlocks, looked like engineering boots, looked like he had been working. And he walked into the Porsche hospitality building. That's all I needed to know. That was my buddy Magnus Walker. Magnus, welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. As Big Texas welcome. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight, and I want to thank you guys for inviting me on to share my story. And I also want to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. I know it's the day before, but I'm getting my little Irish green car right there, right behind me, ready for St. Paddy's Day. Be flying the 4-leaf clover, and just happy to be here. So thank you.
Fantastic. We're not seeing Magnus on the screen. We'll get that queued up in just a second. But, you know, Magnus has quite a great story. You may have seen Magnus in quite a few different things. He's actually a Porsche ambassador now, and he's known for fashion sense. And that's kind of how he started getting his feet on the ground here in the U.S. was overstaying his original plan, and he stayed here. We can talk about that as well. Highly revealed design and just a passionate person about Porsche. A lot of things that are going on are just quite honestly part of a relationship between Magnus and Porsche. Magnus, I want to start back at the beginning. When was
my
your
Porsche
first?
story started like everyone else's. You have a dream as a kid. I had the Porsche poster on the wall. I went to the London Earls Court Motor Show when I was 10 years old with my dad. I grew up in Sheffield, working class background, so Porsches were not a common sight on the roads in Sheffield. But I watched a lot of motorsports. My dad was into motorsports, and mid 70s, England had James Hunt, Formula One world champion, and Barry Sheen, world superbike champion. So even though I didn't grow up with fancy cars in the driveway, I watched a lot of motorsports on TV. I remember watching F1 with Murray Walker, who sadly just passed away, commentating on races in the late 70s and early 80s. So I'd been around motorsports in the sense of, from a spectator point of view, I'd gone to some little local tracks, Donington, Cadwell Park, Mallory Park, stuff like that. And then I went to the London Earls Court Motor Show as a 10-year-old in 1977. Porsche was debuting the White Martini Turbo. It looked fast standing still. I had the cutaway poster on the wall. I actually wrote a letter to Porsche after that event. I left the London Earls Court Motor Show with brochures and pamphlets and posters. And I wrote a little letter to Porsche as a 10-year-old saying how I wanted to design for them. And essentially they wrote me a letter back and said, call us when you're older, which ironically I never did. But 35 years later, long story short, they ended up calling me back. So I had a dream as a kid. I had the poster on the wall, much like you see there. And I think any kid growing up anywhere in the world in the mid late 70s, early 80s, chances are you had 3 posters on your wall, possibly a Lamborghini Countach or a Ferrari 512 Boxer or a Porsche Turbo. So it's a pretty common story of people growing up with a dream. I just never gave up on my dream and achieved my goal of obtaining my first Porsche when I was 25 years old. And that was back in 1992. So took me 25 years to own one. 15 years after I wrote the letter to Porsche, I acquired my first one, which was a slant nose conversion on a 1974 911, which I bought at the Pomona Swap Meet here in LA. And that represented a dream come true and a personal sense of achievement. And more importantly, my first taste of freedom behind the wheel of a Porsche. And I've experienced a lot of memorable moments behind the wheel of my cars and other people's cars over the years. And that's what I think separates all Porsche fanatics from any other marks, is the shared passion and relatability of all individuals creating and wishing to experience all things Porsche. It's a common bond. It's a language we all speak, and it's the thing that brings us all together. So that's kind of my Porsche story in a few sentences.
It is, and totally relatable. I would bet most of us here have that passion in finding it in the Porsche. I wanted to go back to your folks. Were your folks particularly passionate about automobiles and transportation, or was it just A to B transportation for them?
Well, no, I mean, even though we grew up working class, we didn't have fancy cars, but my dad was pretty mechanical. So my dad actually helped my uncle David build a Lotus Type 47 that they bought in kit form in the late 60s from Lotus and assembled it in my Uncle David's garage. So, there's a lot of motorsports activity going around, obviously, in England in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and, all the way through. England is the home to F1 motorsports. And, that period of time, England was sort of really producing some phenomenal cars. The E-Type Jaguars just celebrated its 60th anniversary yesterday, and it was a swinging 60s. So, cars and motorsport and cottage industry and people like Lotus and TVR and Jag, the British motoring industry was pretty busy. My dad's father, my granddad, was actually a sales rep for cars, and he'd ironically worked for this Russian company as a sales rep called Moscovich. So they were around cars, but they weren't necessarily owning cars that I was interested in. My dad was a sales rep and had company cars, Ford Granadas and stuff like that. But my uncle David was pretty successful. He had a design business, and he was the guy that had the taste and the means to acquire these cars. So, him and my dad built this Lotus Type 47. And then my uncle David went on to get a 246 Dino, which he then traded into a fiberglass Ferrari 308 GTB in 75. So I was around cars a little bit, but truth be told, a couple of interesting things. I never had a driver's license in England. I never owned a car in England. I never really drove in England. I'd go everywhere on the bus for 10 pence. But I did watch a lot of motorsports, and that's kind of my upbringing around cars as an early kid, a 10-year-old into teenage years, really.
That that's always amazing. But folks, I said we met here at the Circuit of the Americas. The end of our conversation.
Yeah, keeping it weird down there in Austin.
We still are.
Yeah. ATX.
After we finished our conversation, Magnus invited me to visit him in his own home and his garage shop and everything. Had a great visit there. I come to know Magnus a bit more. Magnus, when we were there, you brought up something, and the more that we spoke kind of away from cameras and audience and autograph seekers of yours, I heard things that really kind of captured your passion. And you described it in ways. One of the things you said of your favorite pair of jeans, your favorite jacket, your favorite shoes. And that was something that you put together over the course of the day visiting with you that just said, there's something about this worn car that's experienced. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's character, it's soul, it's patina. These are things that new cars don't have, or that it's a different type of character and soul on any new object. It's not just a new car. I like collecting, humans like collecting, people collect things, whether it's stamps, trains, guitars, cars, watches, whatever it may be. So I like to collect cars. Specifically, in answering your question, for me, I've never owned a new car. Nothing ever needs to be perfect. I like things that are broken in, slightly worn. I'm not one of those show and shine guys. I say the Porsche world is a marketplace. Are you guys still there?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, yeah, somehow the screen shifted. But yeah, for me, the Porsche pie is got many slices. And by that, I mean, some people love to, take the cars to golf courses and have people with Q-tips and white gloves judge them and give them what I call a paperweight. And these generally happen at various events, probably with Pebble Beach, Concours being the highest level of that. And that's fair enough, each to their own. Some people like to race cars. Some people like to, buy cars and never drive them and say, hey, here's my car with 40 miles on it, like a piece of art, which is fine. But for me, the cars were built to be driven. So that whole thing is, cars for me should be driven. I'm never concerned about mileage on cars. To me, no two cars ever drive the same. I'm sat next to 5 3-liter turbos from 75 to 77. No two of them drive the same. So to me, it's character and soul. When people say to me, hey, I want to show you my car that's got 50 miles on it, I'm not really interested in that. But someone that shows me with a car with a couple of 100,000 miles on it, I'm super interested in that. It's all about the stories and the memories and what I call the memorable moments that those cars, have earned over the years, have been driven. And every car has a story. So, I'm enthusiastic about the variety of the drive, the way cars drive. Back to my Irish green car behind me right there. That's an early 1966 911. So by my math, that car's 55 years old. We can't travel back in time, but I can go get in that car. And essentially, it's almost as if it was 1966. So, to me, it's a way of experiencing a different way of traveling, from this commuting, which is A to B, right? And that's what people do when you commute to work. I walk to work. I'm living up to my last name. I average 10,000 steps. I own a few cars, but truth be told, 90% of my driving is pure pleasure. I don't commute to work. So I don't necessarily drive a million miles, but a lot of the miles that I drive are just pure pleasure, enjoyable miles. And to me, that's what really I enjoy about getting behind the wheel of any car, whether it's a Porsche or not.
Or remember you stating that you measure the distances in smiles. And
smiles per mile. That's something that, you can't necessarily put a price on that. To me, I get enjoyment out of driving various cars, never depending on what they cost or what I've invested in them. I have $5,000 cars and I have cars that cost me a little bit more, but depending where you want to go, each one of them will put a smile on your face. So Smiles per mile is definitely one of those things that I like to talk about.
Absolutely. You know, folks, I know a lot of us know Magnus for his Porsche passion. That's practically trademarked on this guy. But there's something else that might surprise you. I'm going to ask Magnus to reveal what you showed me at your desk.
I don't know what I showed you at my desk because I'm not sat
Roll
next
your
to it.
sleeve up, buddy.
Oh, you want me to roll my sleeve? I mean, I'm never sure what you want to see. Oh, you're probably talking about the Super B tattoo right there. I don't know if you guys can
There
see
you
that.
go, folks. Mopar.
Mopar or no car, yeah. You know, you use the word passion. Passion's one of those things, you know, that cannot be manufactured, put in a container and sold. You know, here's a cup of passion. You know, you either have it or you don't. You know what I mean? You can't fake passion. It's something that I think all true car heads, gearheads, motorheads, whatever you want to call it, we all have a passion and need for speed. It's just a matter of you pick your poison. Is it a Mopar? Is it a Chevy? Is it a Porsche? Is it a sport import tuner? You know, the common bond that I've found is, you know, guys like chasing cars, building cars, driving cars, showing cars, talking about cars, you know, spending time around them. So that is the common bond. And for me, you know, Porsche is my religion, my drug of choice, but I like variety. You know, at one time I owned 269 Super Bs. I have a Super B tattoo. I don't actually have a Porsche tattoo. So, you know, take that for what it is. But yeah, Mopar or no car.
It is. Having previously had a few myself, I get it. It is. You know, that's the thing that I remember leaving. It's like your passion transcends a brand or even a specific car. Absolutely, we know you for the 911 family, but you've got quite a few. You even extended within the Porsche brand, but to other cars. You showed me your non-911 room. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, for me, when it comes to Porsche, you know, I'm a goal-oriented collector. I talk about this a lot. So the goal for me is one of everything Porsche's ever built in a sports car, which is front engine, mid-engine, rear engine, air and water cooled. So of course, you know, front engine, water cooled, it's a 924, 928, 944, 968, mid-engine, 914, Cayman or Boxster, and then one of every generation of 911s. And obviously, last but not least, the car that started everything, the 356. Now, I've yet to own a 356 only because it was a generation before my generation. You know, I had a turbo poster on the wall. I didn't have a 356 poster on the wall. And when I bought my first Porsche as a 25-year-old, which was, you know, what is that, 50 to 24 years ago. So that tells you how old I am. Actually more, 30 years ago almost. I bought it in 92. You know, for me, it was achieving a goal. And that goal, you know, was a dream I had as a kid, and that dream has evolved and my tastes have expanded. So for me, I want to experience everything Porsche has ever made in a car. But the 356 was like the generation before. It wasn't something that I aspired to owning as at an early age. And for me, I've been fortunate enough to own a lot of Porsches because I always bought what I liked, which later on became trendy and then later on became pretty valuable. But at the time, you know, I'd always say, you know, Porsche built a lot of cars that were driven. You don't see a lot of high mileage Ferraris and Lamborghinis, but you'd see a lot of affordable, reliable, pretty high mileage Porsche 911s and various other Porsches, which meant they were obtainable. So my rambling point that I'm trying to get to is, you know, you can't really find an affordable 356. You know, I've kind of missed the boat on the 356 in a way. I mean, there's still, you know, people ask me all the time, what's the best entry level Porsche? And I go, well, it all depends on your budget. You know, if you got $5,000, there's a lot of great cars you can buy for $5,000, 924s, 944s. But perhaps the best bang for the buck is a Porsche Boxster Gen 1 celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. You can't buy a 356 for $5,000 anymore. Those days have long gone. So for me, I always bought what I personally liked, which later on sort of became a little bit more collectible and desirable. When I was acquiring them, you know, these cars that I loved and cherished were relatively easy to find, especially being here in Southern California, you know, perhaps Porsche's, you know, biggest state in the country outside of Florida for Porsche sales, and obviously LA being the epicenter of all things automotive, not just Porsche. So, you know, it wasn't hard to find a Porsche as a 25-year-old that was affordable.
It is. You know, that certainly you have that generation of the Porsche coupes as they pass, but I know you've owned a few others. I think last we spoke there in LA, you were looking for Lotus. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I used to own a 73 Lotus Europa. This is a great story. Pre-internet in the 90s, I used to get the Sports Car Trader every Wednesday night. Came out Thursday morning, but you could get it Wednesday night around 10 p.m. and I'd be flicking through it. And I looked at this Lotus Europa, probably back to my uncle having the Type 47, Colin Chapman, Mario Andretti, Formula One world champion with Lotus in 1978, John Payer special color livery. So obviously I was a Lotus fan. And I saw this ad for this Lotus Europa. It'd been in the Sports Car Trader a couple of weeks. It was in Walnut Creek, sort of Northern California, Series 3, 73 Europa twin cam. And still for sale. I think it was $7,800 at the time. But I called the guy up and he said, still for sale, yes. And I told him where I was. We had a conversation. I told him I was interested. And he said, well, I'm driving down to see my cousin or some family member in Orange County the following weekend. He said, I'll bring the Lotus down. I said, well, if it makes it, I'll buy it. That was the only, I didn't need to test drive the car. The fact that it was going to make it from Walnut Creek down to LA was, shakedown enough. And that was how I ended up acquiring my first Lotus back in the 90s, the 73 Europa. And then a little over 2.5 years ago, I acquired my second Lotus, a 79 Esprit Series 2, which had been mildly modified with a 2.2 liter and a little turbo ducktail wing grafted onto it. So, people are modifying Lotuses and people are modifying every single make of car out there to their own individual taste, whatever it may be, whether it's aesthetics or the need to go faster, stop better, and handle better. So, I've owned a lot of non-Porsches. I mean, currently I have a 75 AMC. I got two E-Type Jags. I have a 69 2+2 automatic straight six. I have a Type 3 Series 3 71 V12 2+2 automatic. These are the entry-level affordable E-Type Jags these days. Back in the 90s, I owned a Series 1 67 fixed-head coupe. So, I like variety, just like in Porsches. So I like to experience what other marques have. But I will say there's a lot of great cars out there, but Porsche sort of excels, whether you're in a 911, a 928, a 914, whatever it may be. Just the moment you get in, everything's ergonomically sort of situated in a good driving position. There's no awkwardness with, the pedals in the wrong position or twisted arms or, windshield that's hitting your nose or whatever it may be. I've been fortunate enough to, drive some technical sort of dream cars. I had a buddy who had a Lamborghini Countach once and he said, do you want to drive it? And of course, yeah, you want to drive it, but it wasn't that great an experience. It's like the typical, don't necessarily meet your heroes because it was sort of anticlimactic. It wasn't comfortable. It was awkward. Pedal setup. You couldn't heel and toe. It was hard. It wasn't necessarily that fast. It was awkward to maneuver on regular streets at slow speeds. And then you get out of that and get into 911 and visibility is great and everything's where it needs to be ergonomically. So, Porsches weren't always necessarily the fastest car of their era, but they were pretty close to it. But they were, super usable. And so that's what I like about Porsches and specifically what I like about 911s.
You're right. The 911s, everyone I've driven, though, as you stated, they may feel a little bit different from the same model of the same year, et cetera. They all have their own little personality, but every one of them feels right. It's acceptable. It's sorted. But I want to go back to something. You mentioned modified and stock and raced, et cetera. You've been monikered as the urban outlaw. How about a quick introduction or explanation what's meant by that?
Well, it's a simple term. It was a term given to one of the early articles that I had written about me in an English magazine called Total 911 that came out in 2011, so 10 years ago. In essence, I live in an urban environment in downtown LA. An outlaw just meaning, if you look Google outlaw, it's someone that lives outside of the law. And obviously, I grew up as a kid listening to heavy metal music, which, later on I realized it sort of influenced my rebel spirit. I always hated being told what to do, cut your hair, get a real job, all that type of stuff. So the term urban outlaw literally was just a magazine article of being in an urban environment, building Porsches, with a little slight different style. There's a lot of people out there building Porsches, I suppose, or modifying or customizing or hot rodding or outlawing. You go back to, Dean Jeffries and James Dean in the 50s, and say, okay, James Dean's little bastard was a modified Porsche. So the modification of Porsches is nothing new. The term outlaw is nothing new. Outlaw Josie Wells and Cowboys, Dean Jeffries was credited with the first Outlaw 356 back in the late 50s. So what I'm doing is nothing new. I'm just adding my own flavor. But what I'm doing is I'm not necessarily emulating something that came before. I'm adding my own spin of, a little bit of Evel Knievel and Captain America and Americana mixed in with some British flair and a little bit of passion, and not trying to copy what came before, and add my own personality and my own individuality and my own style to my own cars. And, for me, it's a hobby. It's not a business. I don't build customer cars. I don't modify other people's cars. What you've seen are just cars that I've built for my own pleasure. So that's kind of the story on my history when it comes to, I suppose, modifying cars, which started probably, I don't know, 2009, 2010. So, 10, 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, something like that.
Exactly right, folks. Be sure and check out Magnus Walker's Urban Outlaw. There's a book, and actually there's also a film documentary. It's about a 40-minute documentary that's great. You can find that online as well.
Yeah, if we're going to talk about Urban Outlaw, I will take a beat, because every time I talk about it, I have to mention the Canadian film director, Tamir Moscovici, whose vision was what became the 32-minute short documentary film Urban Outlaw, which we shot in 2012 and came out October 15th, 2012. It's available online. It went on to win a few film awards. But the interesting thing about the film is it was Tamir's passion project. He was a Canadian commercial film director, Porsche enthusiast, got a little tired of making Bud Light commercials and wanted to make a passion piece short documentary film, which originally was going to be like a 3 to 5 minute YouTube type of short documentary. I'd never done any filming in front of the camera before that. I shared my story, and to me, it made me look good because, as you can tell, I ramble on and he just edit out the good little, 5-10 second soundbite, piece it all together. And the story of the film is it's my story about coming to America. It's not necessarily a Porsche-centric film, but the Porsche is the vehicle that takes you on the journey of what up to that point was my life, my passion, my desire to own Porsches. But it talks about, my background in England and coming to America and starting a fashion label and sex, drugs, rock and roll and the rest of it. So yeah, if you get a chance, check out Tamir's short documentary film titled Urban Outlaw.
Absolutely. He did a lot of great work there. But,
yes, he did.
That certainly got you broke in, and you're definitely accustomed to being on camera now. I want to talk about the next big thing, and that's the next big thing.
Yeah, I mean, Tamir's film was the first thing I did, like I just said, October 15, 2012. And then interestingly, within 2 weeks of that coming out, I was sneaking into the SEMA show in Las Vegas, which is, perhaps the best modified aftermarket show in the world. And I got a phone call whilst I was there from a guy called Robert Angelo, who was a producer on the Jay Leno Garage show, and basically said, Jay had seen Urban Outlaw and wanted to invite me onto the Jay Leno show. So that was the first time within a couple of weeks I'd gone from, this short documentary film to being on Jay Leno's Garage show, and that opened me up to a wider audience outside of the Porsche world. And then in between then, I've done a lot of similar appearances and podcasts and made my own videos and been on other people's shows. And the next big thing, fast forward, is a show that I'm doing with Haggerty for Haggerty's YouTube channel. Season 1 just premiered with 6 episodes. First episode came out January 5th of this year, and we ran 6 consecutive weeks. I ironically just signed up for season 2, which will be 10 episodes. And we had our first pre-production meeting today of season 2 of the next big thing. But what is the next big thing? Essentially, it's me sharing stories of cars that, one, I'm personally interested in myself and looking to acquire. So for me, it's a good way to get behind the wheel of cars that I don't necessarily own at this moment, but I'm interested in, and shed some light on cars that may be sort of the underdogs, the lesser known cars, the cars that might not have been the posters on your wall, but could become the next big thing. A little bit like when I was getting into Porsches earlier on, and these cars were not necessarily trendy, but then became trendy. So season 1, the next big thing, we shot 6 episodes. There was a BMW E39 M5, 2 Jeep Grand Wagoneers. One was modified and one wasn't. And then we did a segment on a Lamborghini and Ferrari. And the goal here was not to do the Countach. When you think of Lamborghini, of course, you probably think of the Countach if you're of a certain age. But we chose to do a feature on the Lamborghini Espada, and then perhaps the underdog, the Ferrari, the 308 GT 4 Dino. We didn't pick a Testarossa or a Boxer. So that was kind of the story of the cars for the first season. We did a episode on a Jag XJS, which is a car I personally like, and then we did an episode on a Dodge Viper, another car that I like, and then an episode on some Mercedes 123 diesel wagon and some Toyota Cressida wagon. So the goal is just basically showcasing people and their stories of cars that may not necessarily be, super popular at this moment, hence possibly could be the next big thing. But it's not the next budget big thing. It's not the next supercar big thing. And at the end of the day, it's just my opinion. I'm not saying, hey, buy a Jag XJS for $5,000 because it might be worth more in 10 years. I've always said, buy the car that you personally like and you're connected to. I've never bought a car as an investment, even though people seem to ask me all the time, hey, what's a good Porsche to go up in value? And I go, you're asking me the wrong question. I'm the wrong guy for that, because I'm the guy that invests in smiles per miles and memorable moments, not what car should you buy today because it's going up in value. I don't antiquate. My brain doesn't think that way. It's more about, do I want it? Is it cool? Am I going to enjoy driving it? So in essence, that is the story of the next big thing. Season 2, we're going to start shooting in end of April, early May, and it'll be on the Haggerty YouTube channel, third quarter, which really is first week of July. So if you haven't seen it, tune on in. You can still go to Haggerty's YouTube channel today, click the next big thing, and watch the first 6 episodes.
You bet. I've been watching a few of those, and you've captured it really well. It is passion. It's not necessarily the fanciest car. It's Magnus out sitting along the LA River / aqueduct, fishing and having fun. And
yeah, I'm trying to add a bit of humor into it. So that segment was, I'd always gone in. The LA River is such an iconic place. They've shot a lot of films there, big budget. Gone in 60 Seconds, Batman, Terminator, Grease is a famous one with the banking and the chase scene, back in the 50s. And as you said, the LA River is not a river. It's a man-made 52-mile aqueduct that basically is a way to channel runoff water from the mountains. But I thought it'd be fun to fish in the river, or fake fish in the river, with a little extendable, collapsible fishing rod, which basically is about the size of a pen, with a little reel, and catch a can of tuna. So I'm trying to have fun along the way. And just, for me, it's all about making the most of every moment of life, occupying my time, creating cool stuff with cool people. And if people like it, great. So everyone that's tuned in, I appreciate your support and up to this point. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. You'll see that again. That's on YouTube. It's the Haggerty channel. We all know Haggerty in the PCA groups. So you'll find that there as well. Charlie, I want to ask, do you have any audience questions?
Hey, Les, we sure do. Got a really interesting question here from Bruce Harris. He's the treasurer of a Hill Country region here. And his question, Magnus, for you is a little bit of a walk down memory lane. And I'm sure he's remembering all the smiles per miles that he got out of this particular car. He lived in Hermosa Beach back in the 70s and 80s, and I suspect that's when he used to get launched off of an aircraft carrier. But he tells us that he had a 1967 912 that he used to have serviced down there at Vasek Polak's shop, and he was wondering if you had a chance to get to know him or any of the people that worked in that shop, and we're lucky enough to have a relationship with any of those folks.
No, unfortunately not. When I came to LA in '86, bought my first Porsche in '92. I think by that time the shop was long gone. I have met his son. I've met some old timers that had their cars serviced there. Obviously, a lot of history that went through those walls. Obviously, a very talented engineer, car builder, car salesman, racer. Obviously, a very well-respected place, but no, I never had the experience or the opportunity to spend any time there.
Well, some of us remember, being able to watch a lot of the racing going on with Porsche when we were kids, and remember Vasek Polak's race liveries on their 911s there. Hey, I've got another question for you from another member. It's Al Leffler, who's also in the Hill Country region here. And he's kind of curious. You're talking about Urban Outlaw. He wants to know, I think he wants to secretly be an Urban Outlaw himself. He wants to know, where do you get an Urban Outlaw sticker for your favorite P car?
Well, first of all, I always say we all have an inner outlaw. So it's just a matter of, reaching down inside and finding your own personal inner outlaw, whatever that may be. The stickers, I would always give them away. I did have my Urban Outlaw merch online store, but I actually closed it down about a year and a half ago. I was traveling a lot and wasn't maintaining it too well. So pre-COVID, I would always travel everywhere with a pocket full of stickers, and anyone that wanted one, I would give it to them and say, put it on your skateboard or your car, or it'll stick to anything but a Prius. Is basically what the Outlaw sticker does. So the kind of hard. I still have them, but as I'm not really traveling, I'm not really giving them out. But it seems like we're sort of maybe seeing the light at the end of the tunnel with restrictions and travel. I mean, for me, it's been an interesting year. How I actually haven't traveled in the past 5-6 years. I was traveling all over the world all the time, but I've actually enjoyed being stable and sat in one place. But to answer the question is, you can't actually get them, unfortunately, at this point, because I'm not mailing anything out. But when I'm back on the road, and I do plan a trip back down to Austin, Texas, hopefully I can join you guys on some of those epic roads down there. I do hear the Hill Country is some great driving roads with great driving people. I was actually recently, not too long ago, down in Dallas, Tejas. So, hopefully if you see me out there somewhere, wherever it may be, generally I have a pocket with Urban Outlaw stickers in it, and I love to give them away. So I hope that answers your question. Doesn't mean you can necessarily get one right now, but patience. But more importantly, find your inner outlaw. We all have one, and sometimes you just gotta, make your own path, make your own rules, and live life to the fullest. That's kind of my interpretation on outlawing.
Gotcha. Hey, Les, do you mind if I ask another question or two?
You can ask a question, certainly.
Hey, I've got several others here, kind of teed up. Here's a really unfair question of you, Magnus. What's your favorite Porsche? Your favorite model and year? And also, what's the Porsche that's been the hardest one for you to be able to handle, from a driving aspect? Because I know you like to drive your cars, really push them. And
my favorite one, without a shadow of a doubt, is the second car I ever bought, the car that's known as 277, the 71 911T. I bought that in 1999. So the car is 50 years old this year. I've owned it by my math, what is that, 99, 22 years. So that is my favorite. Most difficult car to handle. That's actually a great question. It's weird. It's strange because perhaps the one I was the most intimidated by wasn't actually the most difficult one to drive. But I'll share a little story that involves the Ingram family road scholars and their Carrera GT. I was down in North Carolina at an event, Pinehurst Concours, probably, I don't know, 2013, 2014, something like that. They said to me, hey, you want to drive a Carrera GT? So, of course, yeah, you want to drive a Carrera GT, right? Who wouldn't? But before you know it, there's like 20 people stood around, a crowd. All of a sudden, I'm getting a little bit, apprehensive, a little nervous, because all you ever hear about Carrera GTs is people stalling them, which, becomes a little embarrassing when there's a crowd of people around you. But I do remember reading a few articles about the Carrera GT where the key to it really was just let your foot off the clutch, don't touch the gas, and you will have no problem. So I had to reverse out of a rather tricky spot. There's a crowd of people around. I've never been in this car before, but I just remember this one thing: breathe, don't touch the gas, let your foot off the clutch. The car backed up, didn't stall, got it in first gear, didn't stall. And then after that, it was just intoxicating. It was like you just run out of road very, very quickly. So that doesn't really answer the question as what was the most difficult to drive, but that might have been the most intimidating situation regarding, an iconic Porsche supercar. The flip side to that is, I've driven a 959, which, truth be told, below like 3,000 RPM, you might as well be in a 3.2 Carrera because, it's so familiar, it's easy to drive. And then I've also driven the 918, which is an exceptional car, but you could put your grandma in it and she could go through the drive-through at Starbucks and get a coffee in a 918. The Carrera GT, that's something that you really have to be focused on all the time. So, that's the most rewarding and possibly the most challenging one to drive.
Any plans to collaborate with 1552 Design for more outlaw wheels?
Great question. You know, the Outlaw Wheel program was something that I got approached by 1552 early on, and that was 2014, so 7 years ago. And, you know, they were mostly known for what I would term the sport import tuner world. They'd done wheels for Ken Block. They were not necessarily, they were in the VW world, but they weren't in the Porsche world. And they approached me to collaborate on the reinterpretation of the Fuchs, the classic Fuchs wheel. You know, and everyone had sort of copied the Fuchs wheel, so we didn't want to do that, but we took our inspiration from the Fuchs wheel and modified it to our own way by changing the profile and hollowing out spokes. And we had a great run for 5 years with that program. And then 1552 got bought out by an English company called Monotune. And then after that, the program was different. And unfortunately, all of their custom wheels, including the Ken Block wheels, were actually dropped in late 2019, early 2020, and never renewed. They sort of moved into the off-road world a little bit. So for me, I'm all about things happening organically. I've never sort of picked a phone up and called someone and said, collaborate. It's the other way around. And this has happened with me with Porsche and Hot Wheels and various other people that I'm collaborating with. So the answer to your question is right now at this moment, it's not a priority. I was in conversations with Momo a little bit last year about putting a wheel program together, but nothing ever really came of that. So we'll keep rolling with it, but there are no plans to reintroduce the Outlaw Wheel at this moment. I'm working on a few other things. For me, I just do things that feel right at a certain time, and the path of least resistance is generally the way I roll. So never say never, but at this point, there are no Outlaw Wheels available unless you get them on the secondary market.
Well, here's a fun question for you. Chris Splendoria here from Hill Country had posed this question, and you just mentioned it. You mentioned the words Hot Wheels. Boy, when I was a kid, there was nothing better. I couldn't have enough Hot Wheels and enough orange track. But Chris is wondering if you still have a relationship with Mattel and the Hot Wheels crowd.
Yeah. I mean, the Hot Wheels is something also that came about organically. They approached me, I guess 2014 as a 2015 car. So 6 years ago, which was ironically a 356. And everyone said, how can you design a 356? You don't even own one. I go, well, you don't necessarily have to own one to want one or know which type of 356 you'd want. So, you know, it started out with one Hot Wheels, the 356, and now I'm over 30 of them. Ironically, there's 8 different variations of the 277. And probably 3 years ago, they said to me, hey, are you interested in doing a non-Porsche Hot Wheels? I said, sure. So, you know, the first one was a Dodge Charger, and then we did VW buses and Toyota pickup vans and hot rod VW buses and minis. So for me, it's a great collaboration. It's what I call the world's greatest business card to give out. You know, I have a deal with them where, you know, we collaborate. We do 3 to 4 cars a year. I'm now on year 6. His new car's coming out. So for me, it's just a great collaboration with a iconic brand that just happens to be the world's largest toy manufacturer of, you know, this size little toy model cars that you can buy for 99 cents, stick in your pocket and go all around the world with one. You know, I had a model of 277 that I literally traveled around the world. I have photos of it in Australia on the Sydney Bridge. I've got it at Ayers Rock. I've got it on the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, you know, everyone has a Hot Wheels story, whether he's 2 years old or 100 years old. And it's back to that passion thing. It's back to that relatability of what brings people together. And Hot Wheels does it really, really well because they're affordable, right? So you can buy them in most supermarkets for $1, $1.09, whatever. You know, these are affordable things. And Hot Wheels collectors are fanatics. They're like Star Wars guys and Star Trek people. And it's back to what I said earlier on. Humans love to collect. Doesn't matter what it is, stamps, chickens, vodka, whatever it is, Hot Wheels, cars, guitars. You know, there's something interesting about, it's a hunt, you know, it's a hunt for the Hot Wheels, you know. I still, if I see Hot Wheels in a supermarket or at the airport, I'm looking through them. So I still have an agreement with Hot Wheels. There's new ones coming out. I'm talking to them about doing an E-Type Jag, and believe it or not, the Lotus Esprit. So if you're a Hot Wheels fan, stay tuned.
Hey, one last question. I'll turn it back to you, Les. One of the folks on here asked a really interesting question. I just have to put this in front of you. It comes from Frederick Melissa, and he asks, basically he's asking, have you ever done an outlaw 4-door Porsche like a Macan, or would you ever consider doing an outlaw of a 4-door?
Never say never. It's a great question. About 5 years ago, I had this little thing on Instagram where it was a design contest, and essentially It was like hashtag MWUO277 or something like that outlook. And you had to use red, white, and blue and the number 277, but you could do a livery on anything, not just a Porsche. You could do it on anything. And there were some pretty interesting ones that came back of people that had done the sort of my livery based on the 277 on Panameras, on Cayennes. You know, one guy did a really awesome sort of, Baja off-road Cayenne. So never say never. I've yet to own a four-door Porsche. All of the ones I own have two doors. I've driven them, of course. You know, some of my most memorable drives have actually been in Porsche Cayennes. One of them was a drive across Australia. Another one was a drive in Colombia from Bogota to Medellin. So I'm not opposed to it. And just like I said with the wheels, never say never, but I haven't personally done one at this point.
Magnus, speaking of some of the newer Porsches, I know you met a good friend of the Speed City show, Shay Holbrook, racing a little while back. She also was the driver of the famous Taycan on the flight deck commercial. What of the Taycan will somebody that loves the history of Porsche will immediately relate to?
What is the history of the Taycan someone will relate to?
Yeah, somebody that loves the history of Porsche and the classic cars, what in the Taycan will they relate to?
Well, it's evolution, right? Let's not forget when the iconic 911 came out in 1964, 57 years ago, those 356 guys didn't really like the 911. And look, when we think of Porsche now, we think of the 911. You know, I always say you have to adapt to the environment, to the times. You know, we're talking here, I'm talking on a smartphone. You know, 10 years ago, this would never have happened, right? You have to move forward with technology, otherwise you become a dinosaur. So what a classic Porsche, vintage Porsche people like about the history of the Taycan, it's the future. The future is now, right? We're in this interesting time. The car's been around 125 years, and it seems overnight everyone's talking about everything's going to be electric by 2030. Well, time will tell if that happens. I mean, I always say as long as we can still get oil and gasoline, we're still going to be driving these old internal combustion cars. You know, for me, Jay Leno is a perfect example of. I took a drive with Jay Leno in a 1905 steam car. So talk about antiquated technology. That's a steam car, the complete opposite of the Taycan. But you know, he's still able to keep that car on the road. So the Taycan may be the future, but I don't think these old internal combustion cars are going to go away. But I have driven the Taycan. It's a fast car. It's a fun car, and it's a pretty exciting car.
You're right. You know, speaking of Jay Leno, last time, one of the last trips to LA, I was speaking to him as he got out of his Tesla. So there's a guy with every cool classic genre of car and motorcycle, and he's accepted that evolution, as you said.
You know, there's a time and place for everything. You know, I say if I live in downtown, if I had to work in Hollywood or Santa Monica, you know, here's a great example. Santa Monica is 18 miles away, but LA traffic, you know, it can take sometimes an hour and a half to get there. That's what I call commuting. So that's where even an autonomous car makes sense, right? You're stuck on the 10 freeway doing literally 10 miles an hour. You know, it's no fun in a 3-pedal manual car. So that's commuting, and you put that in the little commuting compartment, and a modern self-driving autonomous electric car probably makes perfect sense for it. But you want to go rip up your favorite mountain road, you want to be in control, you know, of the car with your brain, your 2 eyes, your 2 feet, your hands, and hopefully 3 pedals and a gear stick, right? So it's not necessarily about the speed you go. Sometimes you want to go fast, but it's more about sort of controlling your own environment. And that to me is what I describe, you know, the memorable moments, the pure pleasure drives, not worrying about range anxiety in a Taycan or whatever electric car it may be when you want to take the road less traveled, but you go, oh, well, what's my range? And, you know, where's the nearest charging station and how long is it going to take to charge? That is a limitation today to all those cars. But like modern cell phone technology, 10 years ago, people, you know, were on a Motorola flip phone, right? And no one was doing what we're doing today. So, you know, it's horses for courses.
Charlie, I think you got some more questions.
You know, we do.
Shout them out.
Magnus, speaking about, you know, having fun in your car, we've got a few folks here who really appreciate Legos, and they're wondering, hey, have you been approached by Lego to create, the kind of the Lego version of your iconic 277?
It's actually a great idea. No, not yet officially. There's been little conversations. 277 inspired Lego is something that I would love, along with a 277 inspired Tamiya model kit car. Hot Wheels was the beginning. Before I actually had a relationship with Hot Wheels, Schuko, the German car manufacturer, had taken two of my cars, 277 and the 67, and done them in 1/43rd scale. But Lego 277, awesome idea. Haven't officially been approached by Lego yet, but I've had vague, loose conversations with various people at Lego. So stay tuned. You never know. Time will tell.
Great. Ricardo Miranda was the one who surfaced that question, but there are several members of our club who are into the whole Lego building thing. And so I had a question, and I've got a very similar question here from Michael Bainton. And the question really revolves around the design touches that you put into your cars. When you build them, the door pulls, or the way you do your tail lights and things like that. These are the Magnus touches. And my question is, how did you come up with that design ethos? And how did you decide this is what the car is going to look like with a Magnus touch?
Well, I've said it a couple of times before. For me, as great as that is, I didn't necessarily want to emulate that, but I took inspiration from that, which became that what you see right there. So my thing is, the glory area of what I think of Porsche Motorsports is late 60s, early 70s. It's everything from Vic Elford on the Monte Carlo Rally to the first overall win at Le Mans with the 917 with Richard Atwood in 1970. So for me, I take inspiration. This was inspired by Brumos, but it's not the Brumos colors. My 993 art car here was not really inspired by anything that Porsche had done before. This was something that I just personally wanted to do myself. So for me, it's a mix-up of, Americana, Captain America, Evel Knievel, Dukes of Hazzard, red, white, and blue, stars and stripes, thrown in a blender, and then what comes out is stuff like what you see here, or stuff like what you see here. It's just my own interpretation of, I suppose, pop art, 70s art, rock and roll, punk rock, all merged into the blender. You were talking about, turn signals there. And, my goal with this 964, which is perhaps my most performance-orientated build to date, was not to emulate something that had been done before, a backdate or a wide body, but to combine all the elements of the 964, but still keep it narrow body, but add all my own sort of personal things that I wanted to do. Louvered fenders, gas filler cap, channeled roof line right there, rain gutter delete, R-inspired plexi windows. It was a combination of elements of the 356, elements of the roof Yellowbird, elements of the Sport Classic, and all sort of wrapped around, one sort of familiar model. Hold on one second. I'm just going to try and turn the phone around. So that was the story with the 964, the art car. Back to me sort of just having fun with my collection. For me, it doesn't matter whether it's a 914 or a 964 or 924 Carrera GT. They've all sort of got this race-inspired livery going on a little bit. So it's back to the love of motorsports and the need for speed that's incorporated into the things that I do when it comes to cars. And I'll take you on a little tour around the garage. Here's my 67S. This was the first car with the louvered fenders, inspired by the R car, the center hood filler, tartan interior, integrated turn signals, louvered deck lid. And then the heart and soul, of course, the car has to be drivable. This has got a whammy motor that my buddy Matthias Horning in Hamburg built, short stroke 2.5 twin plug, built on a 67S case, dynoed at 271 horsepower. Going in, a little over 2,000 pounds, short wheelbase, narrow body, limited slip gears on you know, outlaw wheels that measure 15x7s on a 225 tire roll round. So that's a little screamer. In here in the big room, you know, there are a few more modern cars, 04 GT3, the row of turbos. These are 75, 6 and 7, 3-liter cars. There's an early 75 left-hand drive, 75 right-hand drive, and a couple of others. My first car I talked about was a slant nose. This is a slant nose built on a 74 Carrera, 67S, 02 GT2, another water-cooled aero kit car, and then a 76. So some variety. And then I'll show you what's lurking around outside. That'll sort of conclude, you know, the little current tour, some memorabilia. And then the 78 SC. So you see there's a theme, color blocking, you know, as a way to sort of add personality. Series 2E type, Series 3E type, 968, very early 928, one of my favorites. And then the AMC I was talking about, the 75 Hornet. So a little bit of variety outside.
There you go, folks. You can tell that it's everything passionate for Magnus. And you know, I want to remind you, check out the next big thing on Haggerty's YouTube channel. You'll see that it's as broad as you're seeing tonight and getting to know this guy. A lot of fun though. But Magnus, thanks for joining us. We are going to get this out. Look forward. When's the next time you're coming to the Circuit of the Americas or Austin? I know it's either music or motorsports with you.
Well, it could be barbecue. You guys down there in Austin, Texas, you're all about your barbecue, right? Don't go here, go there. You know, Salt Lick this, Stubbs that, whatever else it may be. So, you know, Austin, Texas is a fun place. You got the barbecue, you got the bats, you got the hill country, you got great people, you got Willie Nelson. I mean, what else do you need? You got Coda. I'm not really sure when I'm going to be in Austin, but I will let you guys know when I'm there for sure.
Absolutely. Charlie, I think you got one question to close us out.
Magnus, you know, you talked an awful lot about Central Texas and all the great stuff we have here, and we're awfully proud of the things that really truly make us Texan, which I put barbecue right up there at the top of the list. But and all of our nice curvy roads here in the Central Texas Hill Country. So my question of you is, you know, you're going to come to Austin and you're going to spend a little time here, and you know you want to have great barbecue, but you really want to get out and drive some of the roads here. Out of all of the awesome cars, and gee whiz, I could spend an hour more looking at all those cars there. Which one of those cars in your garage would you pick to come drive the roads here in the Hill Country?
Well, it all depends if I'm driving to Texas and back or not.
Let's tell you what, you can ship it to me. I might have a spot for it, and we'll let you just drive and enjoy the Central Texas area.
It'd probably be, I mean, it varies. I mean, 277 obviously comes right to mind, but I like to rotate. You know, recently I've been driving the 78 SC, the hot rod, quite a bit. My 67S, I was driving. I actually had it in snow, less than 45 miles from where I'm sat right now last Wednesday at an altitude of 5,400 feet. So there's something great about a short wheelbase car. You know, it's a momentum car, but when you're on song and the revving, you just keep your foot planted. I mean, truth be told, I've never been a big horsepower guy. I'm more a small horsepower, momentum, flat foot type of car, you know, because the road ultimately determines the speed, right? And by that, I mean, you know, guys that overbuild cars with 1,000 horsepower are not necessarily going 5 times quicker than I am in a car with 200 horsepower. They're not, you know, the road determines the limit. It's just a matter of how quick you get there. So I don't really have an answer. The 67 would be great. 277 would be great. My 78 SC would be great. But probably if I had to drive to Texas and back, it might be something like a GT2, because as great as these earlier air-cooled cars are, you know, the older I get, you know, the more you sort of do like certain creature comforts in a weird way. And last Wednesday, I had the 67S in the snow, no heat, wipers not working, toes were freezing cold, you know, and I'm on the Toyota 888 tires, which don't have a lot of grip. So it's all about horses for courses. But if I'm going to ship a car there, maybe 277's the one to do it.
Gotcha.
But thanks for the invite.
Hey, come on. Hey, you know what? You can ship them all and we'll help you drive them there too.
So I got a question for you guys. What is it that Texans love about barbecue? And I know it's a cattle state. You know, I've been to Houston, I've been to Dallas, I've been to Austin. Sum it up. Why barbecue? Why not fish and chips?
Because barbecue is something that you make on the grill, and it'll take or in the smoker. I mean, it's going to take 16 hours to smoke, and then the barbecue is going to come out and it'll melt in your mouth if you've
So
got barbecue.
what is the key to good barbecue? Keeping it moist so it doesn't dry out?
That's a big one right there. But also keeping your heat low,
Yeah.
not too low and not too high, but keeping it low so it'll smoke all day.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. What is the best barbecue in Austin, Texas? I know it's a hotbed topic.
That's a hotbed topic.
And I know it's a personal preference thing. So there are no right and wrong answers. What is your personal preference if you're not smoking your own barbecue? Where do you like to go?
I'm gonna take a bunch of arrows and heat from everybody that's on this call, because nobody will agree with me. But boy, I love Kreitz's barbecue down in Lockhart. That's a personal favorite. Stubbs is pretty good. Style Switch is pretty good as well. But those are some of my favorites. And
What about this Salt Lake place? I went there, the Salt Lake. It's like a big cattle ranch almost, it seems.
well, it looks good. In fact, that's where we had my daughter's wedding.
Okay.
But yeah, Salt Lake's good, and the drive from there, once you leave Salt Lake, can be really good, because then you're into the hill country.
Well, that is good. Well, I look forward to putting some miles on some cars. You know, it might even be what I call sometimes one of my favorite things, OPP, other people's Porsches.
Ah, well, Magnus, I want to say on behalf of the Hill Country region and the rest of the members here in Zone 5, we appreciate you letting us take up a little bit of your evening. And this has been very enjoyable. I never get tired of looking at your garage there. So we really appreciate you taking out a little bit of your time this evening and allowing it to spend it with us. I want to say thank you also to a few folks. Carl Rossi, who's our vice president and put all this together for us here in the Hill Country. Gordy Robbins, his lovely assistant. No, seriously, he's Gordy's our board secretary and really is our Zoom aficionado here, keeping us all online. And then certainly not last but not least, Les Kiser with Speed City Broadcasting. We appreciate all you guys. And for everyone who joined us tonight, hope you enjoyed it, and hope everybody learned at least one thing. Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks for the invite. If you're in Austin, Texas, keep it weird. If you're in Texas, eat more barbecue. Listen to TZ Top, Willie Nelson, and whatever else you're into. And last but not least, get out and drive pedal to the metal. So thanks for allowing me to come on the show.
You bet.
Take care, buddy. Good to see you.
Thanks, guys.
Speaker is going to be Bruce Canepa, so everybody knows it's coming in May, and be watching for our broadcast announcement with an actual date there. Thank y'all.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy. Cheers.
Travel safe, everyone.
Bye. Good night.